Third down and 20.
We're doing AFC North over-unders to start, and we are starting with my Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers season over-under is currently at 8.5 total wins in a 17-game season, down an entire game from last year when they had 12 wins last year, and now we're at 8.5. What the hell happened last night?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to see, but I mean, you just want me to jump in and give you what I think?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Why
Because
don't you just kick it off?
I actually like the Steelers a lot. I'm going to take the over. Of course, y'all started off, what was it, 11-0 last year?
Yeah, 11-0, and then it just went to shit.
Yeah, but big reason why is you lost Bush, you lost your linebacker, you lost some other pieces, and the offense really could never get going. It seemed like you would either have drop passes or a non-existent running game. I think now with Deontay Johnson, because I still think he is hasn't reached his full potential yet, could really break out this year if he doesn't drop the pass. You also get Juju back. That's another weapon. And Big Ben, coming off the injury from previous year, gets a full year under his belt now and a regular offseason. I kind of like him to max out on that. Plus, you get Najee in the draft, who, I think one of the better backs in this year's draft. Obviously, he was number 1 or number 2 for me, but just also being a threat in the passing game, I think that's also huge for Ben, utilizing the running back in the passing game. And I'm not finding your defense to really drop off a step here. You still got playmakers all over the field, and Mika, TJ Watt. Yeah, you lost Bud Dupree, but I think he's easily replaceable. So I'm taking the Steelers to, have a winning record this year. I think it's kind of asinine.
How many wins are you putting them at? How many wins are you thinking?
I would give them 10. I'd 10 to 7
wins?
or 11 to 6. That's where I see them.
What's the confidence meter at?
I got them at a 7 right there. That's a 7.
7 out of 10?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got a lot to say on this Steelers team. So, first things first, let's start with the defense, which is the real top-tier side of the ball. You have the 2 major losses, and like you said, Bud Dupree and Steven Nelson, which was a big loss at that second corner spot, which wasn't really addressed that much as of right now, those are looking like the 2 major problem spots. But with that being said, we are betting on the Steelers under Mike Tomlin having the first losing record under Mike Tomlin the entire time, his entire tenure. We are betting on the Steelers having a losing record. I am smashing this over. I am smashing the over so hard, especially with a 17-game season. I'm a little surprised that it's not at 9.5. The fact that it went down a game from last year after what they showed in that beginning of the season. Now you add Najee Harris, a legitimate running back that the Steelers desperately needed, on top of the Muth. They add the Muth and Najee Harris to that offense. Yeah. Lost a couple guys on defense, but we kept Tyson Alwell around, which is a huge, huge get back for the defensive side of the ball. You get some of these guys healthy. I am huge on the Steelers over 8.5. For the confidence level, Mr. Dan, it is like a 9.9. 9.9 confidence level.
How does the schedule look, though? Difficulty-wise.
It's a brutal schedule. It is honestly
tough.
Super, super tough schedule, but I don't really care, to be honest. I don't really care. This is a team that, honestly, I might be more worried about having a worse schedule because classic Steelers just playing down to their competition all the time. This is a team that I just think is too good to not get 9 wins in a 17-game season. 9.5 I could understand, and I think that would be the more true line for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season. 8.5 I think is a good, at least 1 game too low. I don't think that they're 2 games worse than the Ravens and the Browns, which are the other 2 major teams in this division right now.
It's interesting. The public's actually on the under, believe it or not. Which is
there's a lot of Steelers shade going around right now. I don't really understand it. No one believes in the Steelers. They think we're frauds.
That might have to do with just like
The
you
schedule
know
difficulty.
the schedule difficulty, Ben being old. I can see that playing a factor too. And I mean, didn't y'all lost Pouncey, right? You lost your center.
Yeah,
Am I correct
we
about
yeah
that?
we lost Pouncey, we lost Villanueva. Offensive line is definitely a problem spot, but I'm not going to act like it wasn't a huge problem spot last year. And losing Pouncey, like Pouncey towards the second half of the season last year was a shell of his former self. Like
Yeah, he was
I
showing
don't
his
really
age.
think losing him is a huge deal. And same thing with losing Villanueva. Like beginning of the season, Villanueva was great, but by the end of the year, our two starting tackles, Chuck Sikorafor and Villanueva, couldn't stop a nosebleed. Dude, we made the Bengals pass rushers look like Khalil Mack late in the season, and that was one of the teams that had some of the lowest pass rush totals all of last year. I don't really think it's a huge issue. And we get Zach Banner back, who looked all right. Added a couple nice offensive linemen, Green, a center in the draft, who's going to be starting day one probably. I can understand the concerns, but I think that the concerns are a little too priced in for how good the team actually is. It's like we're so focused on a couple of the minor holes and not looking at, okay, well, we still have a top three pass rusher in the league on defense, still have a top safety, you know, rest of the defensive line is still pretty good. Freaking Devin Bush is still a top linebacker, at least in my opinion. Still got
Mm.
Hayden. Edmonds is finally starting to put it together, it looks like. So I think that the concerns are being a little too heavily priced in, especially when we're comparing them to the Browns and the Ravens. I understand the Browns and the Ravens are good. They might look pretty good. But are we really saying that the Steelers are a 2-game worse team than those teams? I'm not really buying that.
Yeah, well, we know this division is going to be tight, right? Other than the NFC West, I mean, you can make an argument with this division being the best of football, and you're going to find those three teams like fighting for that, 12-win spot all year. It's just a matter of fact of who gets there first. For me,
All right. Well, I think that's it. Dan, you want to add anything? Your thoughts on the Steelers? What they're looking like right now with their over under?
Dude, I'm just here to listen. I'm just here to listen and take notes. Just keep it rolling.
All right, Steed, who do you want to go to next? Let's go to your team. Your team in this
okay,
division, because you're basically ever since the podcast has become a thing, you have been the biggest supporter of the Browns, saying
yeah,
last year, hey, they're a playoff team. Took the over last year. Steed actually went 4-0 on this division last year. Um, so the Browns, with the biggest jump in win total from last year, this year, last year was 8.5. We were up to 10.5, 2 full games above their over under last year. 17-game season, a little bit more of a favorable schedule, I would say, than the Steelers and like the Ravens in this division. Steed, what are you thinking? 10.5 over under.
This is probably the one I'm most confident in this division. I'm hammering the over for the Browns. I love this Browns team. I've said it before. I think they got a great coaching staff. Stefanski's an absolute monster. Been the perfect hire for them. The offense doesn't change. Everyone's coming back. It's just more experience on the offensive end. And the question has just been, can they fill in the defense? Well, they did that this offseason. Free agency, they get their safety, John Johnson from the Rams. And now you go in the draft, you get a corner to go alongside Denzel Ward, one of my favorite corners in the draft, and Newsome. And then really a glaring hole next after they signed Clowney to go alongside of Miles Garrett was they needed a linebacker, and they got Owosu Koromoa to fall in their lap in the second round. And I just feel like now this defense, with the pieces they have acquired now, can really take that extra step and become a top 10 defense, along with that electric running game with a two-headed monster in Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They can control the time of clock. They have three tight end sets that will just confuse teams. Baker, you saw the progression from all last year. He's legit. He can play this league. Now, is he going to be Patrick Mahomes good, Aaron Rodgers good? No. But he is capable of taking this team to the next level, in which I do. This is my team. I'm favorite to win the division. Overs at 10.5. I got them locked in more as a 12 to 13 win team. Easy for me after looking at the schedule. And they start off rough with the Chiefs, but I would kind of like them in that game. They played them tough in the playoffs. And with now more of an experienced team, I think they match up fine with them. And after that, there's a good shot this team could start 5-2, 6-1. You look at that run; they play the Ravens back to back twice, like back to back, and in between those games, they get a bye week, so they get extra preparation in that game. So confidence level on this, it's a 9.6 for me. 9.6, lock it in for the Browns. I love this team. I think this team is ready to take the next step.
Dude, like I kind of was coming into this one to take the under, but when you look at this team's roster, it is ridiculous. And like not only the draft picks that they added, they picked up Malik Jackson from Philly,
Yeah.
a D tackle that I thought played really well for that squad last year. They got Tack McKinley, so
They got McKinley
just to
as a
be a
rotational
rotational
piece.
pass rusher.
And you also get Odell back.
Yeah, you do get Odell back. I was gonna go with I'm gonna hit the over. Actually, I think I'm gonna join you. I'm nowhere near
Let's
as
go.
confident as you are, but oh my god, I like the Browns, Ravens, and Steelers. I think are all just really, really good teams. I think every
Yeah.
single one of these teams is just really legit and would be up in a division favorite in about every other division in football. So I think I'm actually going to join you there. They just don't have a hole. There's really not a big hole. Even at linebacker without Owusu Koromos, Taki last year, Sion Taki was pretty good for them and was playing at a pretty legit level. Anthony Walker's still there. And then, like you said, you just add to the secondary. You get Delpit back. You still have Greedy Williams. This is just a pretty loaded roster. And they picked up
And,
Troy Hill as well as like a
yeah.
nickel corner from the Rams.
What I also
I'm going to take the over.
Well, what I also like about the defense last year is they weren't a stout defense by any means, but they always figured out a way to create a turnover and they would get points off those turnovers. Now that they have kind of like that complete defense, if they're able to continue to create turnovers, that'll just take this team at like new heights for me.
Well, yeah, and like their offense was good last year. Their offense was
It's very
really
efficient.
good. Aside from week 1 and then those two, I guess that also that week against Pittsburgh, somewhat
Yeah.
early in the season when they got rocked. But the only other 2 games where they did not have offensive production against the Raiders, where they lost 16-6, and in a 10-7 win against the Texans, it was like ridiculous conditions. It was like 30+ mile an hour winds where you just can't run the ball or not run the ball. You can't throw the ball at all. Oh man, this team looks good. I'm just not as confident as you. I'm still not completely bought in to the Browns, but their roster is too good to not say, hey, this team could go 11-6.
How do you think this extra game plays into like the over-unders?
I hate it, to be honest. I
Yeah,
hate it a lot.
It throws me off a little bit, because like you see like a line 8.5 in my head or like a 10.5 line, like I'm thinking 16 game season, but then you got to think, oh well, you got an extra game to cover that. It's like, and then you got to look at who they get for that extra game too. And it's like, does that match up well for them? So like, I'm definitely not a fan of it from the over under perspective. From just getting another game, yeah.
The reason why I think it really has an impact is that in the 16 game season, you always have 6 games in your division. So your division games, if you're in a tough division, it's just hard for all those teams to hit the overs. And like, last year only the NFC West had 3 teams hit the over. Most divisions, like a lot of them had only 1 team hit the over. There'd be like 1 push, 2 unders, and 1 over. But now with that 17th game season, you just add a little bit less pressure, not necessarily in the division games for the teams, but for the over-unders. The division game, there's just less a percentage of division games than there ever have been before. So I think that that's a little bit hard to take into account. And it's actually one of the big reasons why I just said I'm going to say fuck it and take the over on the Browns, Ravens, and Steelers, just because if these teams just split games in these division games with that extra game outside of the division, if I think these teams are all playoff caliber teams, I think they can pick up all these wins, just start scooping them up in these out of conference and even in conference games.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else to say on the Browns? Dan, you got any thoughts on the Browns? Are you a Browns believer?
I wasn't until last year, dude. Last year they surprised me, bro. I remember I was watching the Steelers Browns game was wild, bro. I was picking up the Steelers like after every touchdown, bro, when they win that giant hole, bro, and it was just like not enough to cover. It just wasn't enough. Like they just went down. How much did they go down in the beginning of that game?
Oh my god, it was a
28.
nightmare.
It was
was like
brutal,
it's
and
like
I'm thinking
28
I'm
nothing.
getting a steal just picking them up live, dude, with the points, and it's just like, dude, just touchdown after touchdown. I was just like, Jesus, bro. I didn't
I
see
did
that
a
coming, dude.
similar
I didn't see that
thing
coming at all.
in the Washington football game, or maybe it was the Bengals game. One of the two of those where they went down kind of early, and I'm like, okay, they're gonna bring it back. They're gonna bring it back, and it got close, but then they ended up losing by like at least a touchdown, which then you don't get to cover on the live bet. So not exactly the best team to do it with, but I still believe in the Steelers. I believe in Mike Tomlin. I think that if there's any team that's going to perform having a very difficult schedule, it's them. I mean, this is an 8-8 team with Mason Rudolph at starting quarterback. And it's not like the offensive line was at an elite level that year either. They were still trash. So give me Ben Roethlisberger, just as good of a defense, and now just better offensive weapons. You add Najee Harris and you keep the band together, get a year of development under Claypool. I really and an extra game. Like, I really don't envision a world. Maybe the Steelers get 8 wins. I know we're supposed to move on to the Ravens, back on the Steelers. Maybe the Steelers get 8 wins and you get screwed that way. But I just don't see them getting like under 8 wins. I think there's a much better possibility they're getting 9 than under 9.
How was the schedule last year for the Steelers, though? Was it like easy or was it like solid?
Well, I'm pretty sure at the beginning of the season it was looked at as like pretty medium, but then kind of the way things played out. See, that's the one thing about the schedule that no one wants to talk about is that teams like the Texans last year, if you were to put them into your schedule strength thing, they would have been a tough game. I mean, that was a playoff team, and they won a playoff game. But then all of a sudden, they went out and sucked ass. Same thing with the Niners at some points in the season. Like, the Niners would have been one of the toughest games, and they went out, had a ton of injuries, and sucked. So
True.
that's just kind of the game you play when you're trying to predict schedules. I'm much more of a let me just bet on good teams instead of trying to play schedules, because you'll never be able to predict the injuries. That's the other thing too, is that the risk with some of these is that if the starting quarterback goes down in any one of these teams, all of a sudden your over under is a little bit toast. But maybe not for the Steelers though. We saw them go 8-8 with backup quarterbacks. They beat the Browns week 17 with Mason Rudolph starting. So, oh wait, no, I think they lost that game, but it was close.
Yeah, the Browns barely won that game.
All right, let's go on to the Ravens. Ravens over under 10.5, a game lower than last year. I'm going to start. I'm taking the over. I took their over last year, got burnt, but I have to get one less win with an extra game. Even though the division looks really tough, the Ravens always play well in division. And on top of that, they shouldn't get absolutely screwed by COVID like they did for that second Steelers game last year, where their entire team was dead playing on a Wednesday. Weirdest game of all time, by the way.
Yeah, that was a weird game.
You still got a top 5 coach. The roster, you can make an argument the defense is worse. I think the offense is significantly better, even without Orlando Brown. You had a group last year of receivers that was probably bottom of the league or pretty damn close. And now you add Tylan Wallace, Sammy Watkins, and Rashad Bateman. I can't imagine they'll play worse than they did last year in that position group. I really think that the Ravens are just too strong for me to confidently bet the under. I'm going 3 overs. I know it's a bait. One of these teams will hit the under, but I feel like I'm getting 2 overs out of 3 of these teams. So I'll just hedge, take my 66.6% win percentage, and have a good time.
Yeah, this is where I'm going to disagree with you. It's kind of hard for me because I'm on the fence about this pick, but I took the under with him last year, and I think that line was crazy. It was like, was it like 11 and a half?
11 and a half. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
tough one.
Yeah, and like
Their schedule
yeah,
is brutal.
it's their schedule for me, and also it's just the other two teams in the division. Like I'm higher on the Steelers and the Browns than I am on the Ravens. Like I really can't explain it, but they just don't do it for me exactly. They've lost pieces on their defense. Their defense is still going to be all right, still going to be good. You're right with Harbaugh being top 5, but I'm going to have to take the under on this team. I do not. I just think that if we go into the division, I see as the Steelers and the Browns as a better teams as this Ravens team is right now. I know with Lamar Jackson, I mean, he's a crazy player and it's going to keep you in a lot of ball games, but I think this is the year the Ravens kind of take a little backslide. I think their window to win a championship was in the last 2 years, and you're going to kind of see that window close this year. So I'm going to ride with Ravens under, but not confident with it at all. Like, really not.
Yeah, I thought coming into this, I was flip-flopping on the Ravens and Browns a whole lot. These are 2 teams that I am not very confident in their over-under lines. I think 10.5 is pretty damn accurate for them because they have just as much of a chance of hitting 10 wins as they do 13. It almost depends. Are you going to get hot at some point during the season? Are you going to get those injuries? That seems to me to be the separator compared to like the Steelers lines where even with injuries, I could see that team hitting 9 wins. And obviously without injuries, I feel like they're almost guaranteed the 9 wins. But now we're going to move on to, I can't wait to talk about this team. The last team is the Bengals. The Bengals over under is actually a game up from last year from 5.5 to 6.5. This is my other like favorite line in this division. And I'm smashing the under for the Bengals. I do not see this team hitting 7 wins. We made a video on the Bengals a while back where the Bengals fans weren't exactly happy with what we were saying.
Yeah.
All I have to say to you is I got to see it to believe it. Show me the 7 wins. I'll admit if I'm wrong if it's 7 wins, but until then, screw you, Bengals fans. You're not getting 7 wins. Your roster's overrated. You have an average at best defense. Cool, you have some of the flashy players, but you've had flashy players. Joe Mixon's a great running back, but he's only so good when he's getting nailed 3 yards back in the line of scrimmage every play. I think that they have probably the worst coach in the league. If I were to rank all of the coaches, I think he is the one that I would pick very last of all the coaches, right? Even the rookie guys. Yeah, I'm gonna have to see it to believe with the Bengals team, tough division. I do not see 7 wins.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's just you got to prove it. And with this team, and with that division, I mean, I see them losing all 6 games to the Steelers, the Browns, and the Ravens. I don't see them competing in that category. And then you got to play the same out of conference, out of division teams as these guys, and I don't see you putting up much of a fight. Like, yeah, I love Joe Burrow. I think he's a good quarterback, but I don't think he could do it all by himself over here. I understand your weapons at receiver. You just picked up Jamar Chase, but is he going to be able to score 3 touchdowns a game? I don't know. I can't believe that. So I'm with you on this. I think this is an easy under for me as well. Maybe 4 or 5 wins this year for the Bengals.
Yeah, I think that everyone is so concerned about looking into the flashy players that have we forgotten about the Falcons for like the past 3 years? This is a team
where's
that
your depth chart at?
they had the quarterback, they had plenty of good receivers, tight ends, an average or below average offensive line, and then a average at best defense. And even the Falcons probably have better top end defensive players than the Bengals do. And you're going to ask me to come out here and say, oh, well, the Bengals are all of a sudden going to win more games than the Falcons have in a harder division? Yeah, no shot for me.
Yeah, I'm out.
Confidence, 10 out of 10. What about you? What are you thinking? 10 out of 10 on the Bengals under?
Oh yeah, pretty much. Maybe like a 9.8. 10 out of 10 is like that would be like my Texans under for me.
Listen, I'll admit if I'm wrong on this over under. Like the Bengals fans have already tore into us enough, but
Well,
dude,
when
if
you're
you
looking
guys
at
don't
it,
win 7 games, I'm out for blood.
when you're looking at it, like looking at the history of like just like them reaching their over projected of wins is like when's the last time they done that, and why should I pick y'all now? And where the division looks a lot more dominant than it ever has. I can't do it. You haven't proven anything
Did
to me.
did you guys expect Jamar Chase to go to the Bengals, or were you expecting them to draft a lineman?
I think it was like almost just a toss up between Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell. I wasn't surprised. I don't think I would have done it, but the one thing is they did sign a tackle in free agency, Riley Reef from the Vikings. So I'm not surprised to see them pass up on a tackle just because they drafted Jonah Williams like 2 or 3 years ago, first round tackle at Alabama, who they like, and they picked up another tackle in free agency. So if you drafted Penei Sewell, someone had to get kicked inside, which is just a little wonky. I still think I would have done it though. I'm a big proponent of your football team is only as good as your offensive and defensive line. And the Bengals have the weakest offensive and defensive line in the entire division. I don't really care about your skill players. You're just not going to win football games if you don't have a good offensive line. Like I compared it to the Falcons. The Falcons when they made it to the Super Bowl had one of the top offensive lines in football and an above average defense. All of a sudden, you lose those two things and you can't even get a winning record. Like it's not really a hugely complicated formula.
Yeah, I mean, I had him locked in with Panay Sewell until like, of course, Joe Burrow was vouching to get Jamar Chase, and I think that played a huge part of it. And again, I'm not letting my rookie quarterback choose who I pick at the fifth pick. I think that's a little asinine. Like I know it's kind of cool; it'll get in the media. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase reenact, but going forward, I don't think it really does much for this football team. I think Jamar Chase is an extremely talented player, and I think he'd probably have a great career in this league. But for like the Bengals going forward, I don't think it really solves what they needed to do.